In this episode, we dive into the number one reason why incessant thoughts, negative thinking, waswas of the shayateen impacts our lives, and why so many of us get caught in this, and it creates fear, anxiety, and overwhelm. You can actually solve this with 5 tools that I'm going to share with you in this episode. This is going to help you to create true inner calm, inner peace that you will be able to live with regardless of how bad this problem is. If you have tried everything and nothing has worked, this will work. This is a Quranic Science of the Nafs psychology-based approach to solving the negative, incessant thoughts, the waswas, and the cause of all mental health issues. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast, folk. We're diving into one of the most fundamental lessons that every human being needs. And this is actually at the core of mental health. And at the same time, this is at the core of life, growth and development, and really succeeding in our lives. Like, this is the thing that builds us up to create the best lives. And it's also the thing that actually destroys the quality of our lives. Negative, incessant thinking, negative thoughts, the incessant waswas that we experience, it actually destroys the quality of our lives, and it destroys what we're able to do, the potential that we have. Like, every one of us has this potential, but it destroys it. So I want to dive into this episode where I'm going to share with you 5 fundamental lessons. And here's the thing, this is one of the most important lessons that you could have if you struggle with a negative mindset, incessant waswas, any type of low mood or low feeling that is impacting you. If you are feeling lost, if you are feeling like you are overwhelmed with everything and all of the things that you've got in your life, the number one thing that's going to help you to solve this is your mind. So we want to get a handle on this negative thinking so that we can actually create the solutions that we want. So there are going to be 5 things I want to cover with you in this episode. Number one is going to be your relationship with this belief that there is something wrong with me. Like, this is actually something that is impacting so many people. They just don't recognize that it's impacting them. There's something wrong with me. And very often we hide from that, and I'm going to dive into that. Number 2, we're going to cover the negative, dark thoughts that actually make people not want to continue with their life. Maybe it takes you to the point of hopelessness and feeling suicidal. And sometimes it's not as bad as that, but it is, spiraling down, and it impacts everything in your life, your relationships, everything. So we're going to dive into that. Number 3, the feeling of never being good enough, no matter how much you do, and where this is coming from, how this is created, and what you can do to solve this problem. Number 4 is the waswas. Waswas is the incessant negative thinking that you have no control over, and it feels as though it just happens to us. And we're going to dive into what you can do about this and how you can overcome this. And number 5 is about your future. Like, really, when you don't look forward to your future, when you hate the idea of a future, you don't want to think about it, it's usually inducing anxiety. And what we want to do is we want to get a handle on that, and we want to solve it. And I'm going to wrap all of this up with one solution, a number of different ways we can apply that, but with one solution. And so here's the thing. You're going to want to get through all of this as quickly as possible. And I'm going to suggest to you that you actually take your time, you go over this lesson as many times as you need to. This is a lesson that I teach my students. I train my coaches on, therapists, coaches, leaders, people who are, really taking control of their lives and impacting the lives of others. I train them in this understanding so that you can actually get a hold on the very things that sabotage our lives. And when you get to understand this, you actually get to create inner peace. You get to create a calm that actually helps you to flourish in your life. Because most of us, what we want is that we want to actually do well in our lives. And when you have this tirade of negative thoughts and feelings, what will happen is that it will destroy your state of mind. It will have you in a state of confusion and feeling insecure, anxious, and very often reactive to the world around you. And of course, when we become reactive to the world around us, it actually impacts us in our businesses, impacts us in our careers, impacts us in our relationships at home, in our parenting. And soon enough, we see our children having the same behavior, the same pattern of reactiveness, anxiety, overwhelm, and it comes out in outbursts. And very often what that does is that it ruins the family home. And so it's going to be very important that you understand these 5 lessons so that you can actually understand why this is happening and what you can do about it. Because the number one thing is that all of this compounded, it actually affects your relationship with your creator. This is at the core of the problem and the solution. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into what it actually means to have good mental health. Like a good state of mental health is what we all want. And that is really about feeling healthy on a day-to-day basis, feeling healthy. Feeling healthy is when you feel like you can cope with life, when you feel as though everything is going to be okay. And it is when you stop the negative intake, whether it be from, people around you, whether it be from yourself, or whether it just be these negative, incessant thoughts, right? If you are having these constant negative, incessant thoughts, it's actually going to impact you in ways that you don't even realize and you don't even recognize. And so it's important to understand what is actually happening, because the reality is that many of my students are people who are from a psychology background, or they're imams, and they have a knowledge base already, but they still struggle with this. Why is that happening? Because very often what we do is that we take the traditional approach, which is the Western psychology, or the Freudian approach, or you're taking an approach to understanding your mind which doesn't come from revelation. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us exactly how we work, and the science of the Nafs is the solution that I teach all of my students, regardless of their background. And it actually gives you the ability to take control of your mind and to take control of your life. In Surah Al-Ra'd, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change their own condition. You see, this is explicit in that Allah will change your condition when you take control of what you have control of, which is always going to be yourself. And so the negative mind, the negative incessant thoughts, the constant negativity that we feel and we think, this is something that you can actually take control of, because this is an explicit verse that tells us that you do have control. So much of the time there's a misunderstanding with this, and even from people of knowledge, imams and scholars, you may hear that you can't do anything about your feelings, that you don't have control of this, but actually that's not true. It's not true that we don't have control of our feelings, and we can't control it, and we can't control the mind. And the natural recourse has been to go to ruqya and consider this waswas problem, an evil eye problem or something like this. But the reality is the mind is what dominates your life. It's what makes you feel what you feel. And if you were to use a Quranic based approach to the mind, which is what I'm going to share with you in this, you would be able to begin the change process. And the begin the change process means that you can actually take control of your mind and your life. So here's the thing. The 5 things that are actually causing the problem, these are things that have been causing the problem for most of humanity from the beginning of time until now. And the missing link is the understanding. And the understanding is the first part of the, what is happening, deconstructing what is actually happening so that you understand it, so that you can change it. And then the second part is to actually solve it. So I'm going to give you a solution that you can use on a daily basis. But it's important that you go back over this lesson as many times as you need to, listen to it as many times as you can, so that the information settles in. Because my experience with my clients, my students, is that there is this resistance to using a solution, because of how we feel. And when you feel that way, what you'll do is that you will rebel. But the rebellion is, very often we think that we're angry and we rebel against Allah, but actually what happens is that we rebel against ourselves. So one of the core problems that this causes, negative thinking, negative feelings, what it causes is that we disconnect from Allah. This is one of the core problems. And why is it a core problem? Because it's at the foundation of your mental and emotional health. It's actually at the foundation of your success in life, in the dunya and the akhirah. So the thing is, like, when you turn away from Allah because of how you feel, because of what's happening, it's actually going to impact your whole life in the present and the future. And the worst of it that you're going to experience is in the now. So what people talk about getting mindful and getting into the now, that's not going to help you, because as soon as you get into the now, you will feel hopeless and you will feel despair. And this is what we want to overcome. So the very fact that Allah tells us that, he will change the condition of the people if they change their own condition, it actually tells us that we can change ourselves. Right? We can change ourselves. And this is always by choice and determination. And we'll talk about this as we go through these lessons. So the first thing is, like, the biggest problem that this will cause you, this problem of incessant negative thinking, it will cause you the feelings of disconnection from Allah, like feeling as though Allah is not supporting you. And when that happens, you will actually, most people, they withdraw, and then they become disconnected, and then they let the salah slide. They stop making dua. All of these things happen. And as a result of that, we get caught in this incessant cycle, right, of negativity. And that's what drives us down. So if you are experiencing that, I want to just suggest to you, just slow down for a while and really understand what I'm sharing with you in this. Because it will help you to create an inner calm. It will help you to actually feel better in the current moment. And the minute you start to feel better, I want you to recognize that this is a blessing from Allah. This is not something that comes from this video, but it is a blessing from Allah. It is something that Allah is guiding you to, so that you can solve this problem. So this is the light at the end of the tunnel that you need to see. That is the immediate hope that you will actually solve this problem. And I'm telling you, if you apply what I share with you in this lesson, inshallah, you will solve this problem. But it will take for you to consistently go back over these lessons and apply them into your life. So the number one problem that it creates, all of these, these 5 lessons, they all impact your relationship with Allah, right? They all impact your relationship with Allah. And when you solve for these 5 things, they all impact your relationship with Allah in the positive and actually reconnect you to Allah. So this is what we're talking about in this session. So number one, the problem that so many people struggle with is that you believe that there is something wrong with you. When you believe that there is something wrong with you, what you're going to do is you're going to look at other people. You're going to look at the world around you. You're going to wonder, why is this happening to you? And this is actually a negative thought. So I want you to recognize it for what it really is. It's a negative thought. And the fact that you don't question it, the fact that you just accept the thought, it creates more problems. Because when you accept that, then what will happen automatically is that you will feel sad. That's the initial thought that you will feel. You will feel sad. You will feel as though there is something missing, and there is nothing that you can do about it. Because if there is something wrong with you, then what does that mean? That ultimately means that, the one that created you didn't create you perfectly. And even though Allah tells us this in the Quran, that He created us perfectly, He fashioned us perfectly, like, what we start to think is that there is something wrong with us. And I want to just suggest to you, like, when you look at yourself and you compare yourself to other people, you may believe that you don't have an ability that everyone else has. And when you see that, what you see is a shortfall. What we think is that this is a deficiency, and this is something that actually, is going to affect the quality of our lives. And really what is affecting the quality of your life and my life and everyone's life is the thoughts that we have. So when you have this thought, regardless of what your physical or mental ability is, regardless of that, when you have this thought that there is something wrong with me, that is the problem that creates the feeling that you're feeling, right? So if you feel despair, if you feel sad, that's what's going to happen. Now, here's what happens. This is, when this happens and we think this thought over and over again, what it will do is that it will have a physical impact on you. If you think this so much that you are incessantly thinking this, like meaning that you think about this day and night, if you do that, then what's going to happen is that it's going to have a physical impact on you, like what they call psychosomatic. It is physically, mentally induced, but it's impacting you physically. And ultimately, what that will do is that feeling of sadness will become resentment. And when you start to resent the way you are and what you believe about yourself, then what will happen is that it will impact your connection to Allah. You will start to despair. When people start to despair in this situation, then the anger that they have, they turn it towards Allah. And it's not like we do it on purpose, but when you feel as though there's something wrong with you, you're going to despair, you're going to be angry, and eventually you will blame, you may blame your parents, you may blame Allah, but ultimately you will begin to blame. And when you get into that, then you lose all control. And where is the control? The control that we have is the control of our mind. And so I want to just point out again that really what's creating this is your belief or your thinking about yourself that there is something wrong with me. So this is the first problem that creates a disconnect from Allah. It creates a mental instability, and it creates physical responses in your body. Like you may feel pain, you may feel headache, you may feel, like highly stressed to the point of being debilitated, not wanting to do anything, not wanting to get out of bed. If this is incessant, this is what it will cause. So this is the first thing to understand. The second thing that impacts so many lives is negative, dark thoughts will impact you, it will impact the people around you, and it will make you feel so much sadness, fear, and then eventually despair. This is actually, again, incessant thinking that we keep on fueling by giving it focus. When you focus your mind on this and you ask yourself, like, why is this happening? And you consistently ask yourself negative questions that induce more negative answers, then what's going to happen is that you will feel despair. And in that despair, these negative dark thoughts, they actually fuel the feeling of despair. And when you feel desperate to the point of no hope, that's when people start to feel suicidal. That's when people feel that there is no solution. And I want to tell you that actually what's creating this feeling right now, if you're experiencing this, or if you've ever experienced this, what creates this feeling is what you are thinking over and over again. And when you think this over and over again, then what we do again is that we stop making dua. We stop, expecting that Allah will give us a solution. We stop expecting that we're ever going to get out of this. And we compound our negative beliefs with other negative beliefs. So in other words, you have negative thoughts that make you feel this way to begin with. And when you look at everything around you and you have more and more of this, then what that will do is that it will compound the effect of it. And the effect of it is that it almost drives us down into hopelessness and desperation. And when we get to that place of hopelessness and desperation, very often what we do is that we disconnect from Allah. We stop asking Allah. And even if we ask Allah, we don't believe that Allah will ever answer us. And when you get into that place, it will impact you in the most negative way. But I want to say to you that you can stop this and you can overcome this. Like, what it's going to be really powerful is that you start to look for things in your life right now, in that moment. Look for things in your life that are a blessing. And it's almost like you've got to scan your life, scan everything about your life. And sometimes that's very difficult to do in your mind. So what's easier is that you begin to write this stuff, and you write it on a piece of paper, or you type it on your phone or your app, like anything that you can use to take it out of your mind. But you begin to look for things in your life that are, considered a blessing. Even if you don't consider it a blessing in the moment, like, I want you to just really think about this. Like, your ability to listen to me right now, your ability to focus on what's being said because you have an interest in what is being said here, your ability to actually breathe, your heart beating, even if it's racing. I want you to think about this. Like, who makes your heart beat? You're not on life support. Like, the support that you have is Allah. Allah makes your heart beat. Your ability to feel, your ability to taste, your ability to actually walk and talk and communicate. Like, all of these things are blessings that you're overlooking in your life right away. The people in your life, the family. Like, I want you just to slow down and look at the good things in your life right now and list them off. And as you list them off, tell yourself, this is very important, tell yourself that you have these blessings in your life right now. Tell yourself about your children and the love that and affection that they show you. Tell yourself about your family members. Tell yourself about, your health, your wealth, all of the things in your life right now. It's important to hear it. And sometimes no one else can tell you except you. So it's important, even if you are telling yourself, because the negative internal chatter, this dark, incessant thoughts that are overtaking can be overtaken, meaning that you can overrun these with your own thoughts that you choose. So it is really powerful if you just slow down when you're experiencing this and you begin to look and scan your life for all of the good in your life immediately. And when you do that, you're going to realize that Allah is blessing your life. Allah has given you answers. You're just not seeing it in the moment. Because when we get stuck in that emotional fog, what happens is that we can't see anything. And so what's required is that you need to shine a light on all of the good things in your life. And one of the best ways to do this when you're stuck in dark, incessant thoughts is to scan your life for the good. And here's the thing, you are going to be resistant. And the reason that you're resistant is because you feel so bad. And when you feel that, feeling of hopelessness or despair, at that moment, the one that is guiding you to a solution has given you a mind that you can use. That mind will, if you direct it to the good in your life, automatically you will start to see some hope, and inshallah the darkness will dissipate. Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always taking care of us. Allah tells us, Allahu waliyul ladina amanu. He is the guardian of those who believe. So what's really important in this moment when you're experiencing this is to have belief. Like, belief that you will get out of this, belief that you will be okay, belief that you are okay even now, even though it feels not, it feels horrible, even though it doesn't feel so good. And when you do that and you're willing to believe over and over again, despite your own internal resistance, what's going to happen is that you're going to overcome that struggle by believing. And this is the key that will change your life. So this is number 2. Number 3, when we feel as though we're not good enough in our lives, is very often because we're forever comparing ourselves to other people, our siblings, our family, our friends, people that we don't even know. With the advent of social media, we're looking at people on all of the different social media platforms, and we're looking at the glitz and the glamour of what they're portraying, and we feel as though we don't have that in our lives. And when you get into that, I can never be good enough until I'm like this person or these people, or my life is like this, then when you believe this, then ultimately what that will breed is a belief inside of you that says that life is not fair. Life is not fair. That, there is injustice in your life. Like, we're not talking about injustice in the world, but there is injustice in your life. And you will feel really stuck. And really what we're stuck in this moment is that we're stuck in this mental paradigm, right? There's this mental construct that's happening inside of your mind right now that is comparing you to everything else around your life. And you see, the thing is, the crazy thing about this is that if you were to ask someone else that you're comparing yourself to, very often we find that they're also comparing themselves to other people. They're doing the same thing. And they're always feeling that they're not good enough. This is actually, ubiquitous. This is such a common problem that it doesn't matter how many people you look at. If you speak to them and you really get to know them, you're going to see that they're doing the same thing. And this actually impacts the state of your mind, your well-being. Like, it destroys the inner calm, because you're always and forever in this race to actually become something that you believe will be good enough. But here's the thing: when you get to that place, like many people do, you get that achievement, you achieve that goal, whatever it is that you're after, you get to that place, you get married, or you have kids, or you have a successful business or career, or whatever it is that you've been telling yourself you need to have to be good enough. When you get to that place, you realize all of a sudden that it's still there. That deep-seated feeling of not being good enough or something being missing in your life is still there. And the reason it's still there is because it's not created by the things in your life. It's not created by all of the things that you think you need to have in your life to be good enough. And ultimately, it's being created by the state of your negative thinking. That's what's creating it. The negative thinking is creating this unfair life. And when you feel as though this unfair life is your life, then again, this impacts your relationship with your creator. And when it impacts your relationship with your creator, you will believe that Allah is unjust, even though you may not say it, but you'll feel it, that Allah is not just to you because everyone else seems to have, but you don't seem to have. You keep asking and you don't get. And so that impacts the salah, that impacts dua, and then we start to become cynical about dua and worship. And some people, they stop praying altogether. Some people stop making dua altogether. Sometimes what happens is that you're praying, but your prayers are so fast. Your dua, it's almost lip service. Like, you just say it because it's habitual. Maybe you wrote it down. Maybe you memorized it. You said it so many times. And what you miss is the conviction in that worship. And in that moment, like, the thing that actually happens is that this connection that we want to feel with Allah, we don't feel it in our worship. And when you don't feel it in your worship, then it will impact all of your worship. It will impact the longevity of your worship. Some people, they just stop praying. Some people stop asking. And because they don't believe they're going to get what they ask for. And this is actually created by what? Negative, incessant thoughts. Your negative, incessant thoughts are making you feel this way. And when you feel this way and you feel as though life is unfair, and it came from the root of you comparing yourself to everyone around you, or to people that you admire, or you want what they have in their life, like, it breeds a negative sentiment. It breeds a negative, more negative thinking, and it breeds negative feelings, and it actually leads to jealousy. It leads to envy, and it leads to you wanting to the point that you despair that you'll never have it. And when that happens, again, the only person that's truly impacted by this in the most negative way is you. And so what I want you to recognize, and I want you to really recognize this, is that you don't need to do this. Like, you don't need to compare yourself to other people. And the minute you stop comparing yourself to other people, the minute you give yourself a break, right? You're going to feel relief when you do this. Like, when you stop comparing yourself to everyone around you, or people around you that you admire, you can make dua for these people. You can ask Allah to bless them more in their wealth or their health or the things that you admire about them. But you can also ask Allah for those things. But what is required for you to get that response from Allah is that you have to actually anticipate and expect that Allah will give you what you want. But you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to begin with the kind of thinking that stops you feeling as though your life is unfair. So we're going to talk about that in depth, but I want you to really understand like what's creating this problem. It's the negative incessant thoughts. Those negative incessant thoughts, they impact us, make us feel that we're never enough, that no matter what we do, no matter how much we achieve, that it's never enough. And it's actually going to impact you in a mental, emotional, physical way. It's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact your whole life, because it will impact the way you show up in your life. So this takes us onto number 4, which is waswas. Now, waswas is, I want to say that it's highly misunderstood, because when you feel as though you are impacted by waswas, you go to Iraqi, or you go to imams and scholars, you go to people who talk about waswas, and they will tell you that it's waswas of the shayateen, seek refuge in Allah, do these things, which is what we should be doing. But that's about as far as we get. And one of the things that you do is that, you hear a lot, remembrance of Allah, ruqya, like reciting Quran, like all of these things will help you. But if you're doing all of those things and it's not helping you, then I want you, this is going to explain to you why it's not helping you, right? You're going to understand why it's not helping you and what you can do about it. But I want you to understand the nature of what waswas is in the beginning. Like waswas of the shayateen, like is literally, waswasa is literally, this pattern of, in the Arabic language, the pattern of the word itself, it's indicative of something that comes and goes. Because Allah tells us, the shaitan, like the jinn that you can't see, whispers. And this is the only power that shaitan has. Shaitan doesn't actually have any power over you, even though there are all these horror stories, and we've been taught as we've gone through our lives that shaitan can have all this negative impact, and the impact of possession and all of these things. I want you to understand that the most shaitan has, and this is actually a very powerful tool that shaitan has, is that he can't be seen. He can't be seen because he's of the jinn. So we can't see the jinn. But what he does is that he keeps coming and going, meaning that he's incessant. These incessant thoughts, they are just thoughts. And very often, because we attribute more power to shaitan than he actually has, then we are impacted in the most negative way. And if we understood the cause of, waswas and the actual impact of waswas and why it impacts us, then you will understand what you can do about this. So let's just get right to the bottom of this. Waswas are just words and thoughts that are whispered in your mind. You can't see who's whispering it, so hence you think it's your own thinking. And one of the easiest ways for you to understand this is that it is just negative thinking, right? I want you just to really think about this. Waswas is just negative thinking. Like literally it's a whispering, right? And if I were to whisper in your ear and you couldn't see me, then what you would see around you is nothing, no one, but you would hear my words. And what that does is that it plays these words in your mind over and over again. And if you keep on having the same words playing over and over again in your mind, then what's going to happen is you're going to be impacted by those words, just like you are by all the other types of negative thoughts. Like any other type of negative thought that we've already covered, these impact you just the same as waswas will impact you. So what does Allah tell us about waswas? Allah tells us that we should seek refuge in Allah from the waswas of the shayateen. So how do you seek refuge in Allah? Like the negative incessant thoughts that you have, even if you've done ruqya, even if you've done, you spend your time in dua, remembrance of Allah, and you find that it's not helping, it's because we believe those thoughts. It's because we believe the thoughts that we're having. Like we don't question them, we don't reject them. You see, when you seek refuge in Allah, what you're doing is you're rejecting the waswas of the shayateen. You're rejecting the negative thoughts. This is tantamount to overcoming this. So I want you to really understand this. Like when you seek refuge in Allah, when you turn to Allah, what you're doing is you're turning to the good anticipation of the answers to your du'as, the good anticipation of your life and what you're going to get from Allah, because all good comes from Allah. And when you turn to Allah, what you're doing is you're rejecting the waswas, you're rejecting the negative incessant thoughts. And when you reject the negative incessant thoughts, you're disconnecting from those thoughts. and you're connecting to Allah. What tends to happen is we do the opposite. When we're impacted by this negative incessant thinking, we start to disconnect from Allah, and we connect more with the negative incessant thoughts. And the more you do that, the more you're impacted by the negativity, because it's going to make you feel despair, it's going to make you feel angry, it's going to make you feel deep sadness. This is at the cause of OCD. It's at the cause of, the impulsive thinking, all of the talk around ADHD. It's at the core of depression, intense anxiety, clinical depression. So even though we think, when we think clinical, general anxiety disorders and clinical depression, we're thinking about, the state of how we feel stuck, and it's been explained away by the scientists and the clinicians. It's been explained away with biology. And the problem that you have when you explain it away with biology is that you can't solve it, because you're forever trying these different biological hacks to solve it, or neurological hacks to solve it, and ultimately none of it is working, because you're trying to counter the chemical composition of your body. You're trying to change it so that you can feel better. But Allah gives us a solution. This negative incessant thinking, it's actually creating the emotions that you're stuck in. And if you disconnect from Allah and you connect to the negative incessant thoughts, like the waswas, then what you're doing is you're doing the opposite of what Allah tells us. So even if you're doing ruqya, even if you're making dua, even if you're doing all of those things that you're being advised to do, and that you understand to solve the problem, but it's not working, it's because we don't believe in that moment. You're not believing that Allah will give you a solution. You're not believing in all of the good in your life. You're disconnecting from your belief in Allah. And this is, I'm not saying that this is kufr. What I'm saying is that in the moment, your beliefs about a solution with Allah, or your beliefs, you're becoming angry and rebellious and turning away from Allah because of what you're feeling, following the negative incessant thoughts. Like, this is what we're doing essentially. We're not following our beliefs, we're following the negative incessant thoughts. When you do that, you disconnect from Allah, and it has the most profound negative impact on you. All human beings are impacted by this. Like, I find today a lot of the modern day therapists and researchers, like they're researching into all areas, and you've got different types of therapies that they're trying to now bring in to solve this problem. And the problem is one that begins with waswas. It's one that begins with negative incessant thoughts, and they're using psychedelics, drugs in other words. They're using TMS or different types of physical manipulation, mental, neurological, physical manipulation, to try and solve a problem that you could solve by returning to Allah. This is so profound that if you were to do this, and you were to do it consistently, it would begin to solve your problem. But it is really such a problem because of the misunderstanding. When we don't understand this, and we don't understand at the core of mental health is your relationship to your creator. And when I say relationship to your creator, it's at the core of mental health. Like, when we don't understand this, and we're forever trying different techniques and different methodologies, and it gives us a coping mechanism, but it doesn't solve the problem, then you know that you have to go back to revelation-based solution. Follow your beliefs in the creator of all that you see existing, meaning the creator of you. Ask your creator. Don't ask, creation. Anything within the creation, be it idols, be it people, be it holy people, be it spiritual people, be it the quote unquote expert in the subject. Like, instead of asking them, ask your creator, and begin to believe that your creator is going to give you a solution. Your creator created you perfectly, even with this problem. This problem, it comes from the negative incessant thoughts. Like, the minute you disconnect and you reject those negative incessant thoughts, then you begin to accept and chase your beliefs. Then what will happen is that you will overcome slowly but surely. You will overcome these negative incessant thoughts. Like waswas the shayateen, it is dealt with by actually following belief and disconnecting from the waswas. And this is the number one solution to this problem. Like, people, you and I, like myself included, like I'm no different to you. Like the scholars of Islam, the scholars of, sciences, the different sciences, everyone that you look at as an expert has the same problem. And this is a human problem because we don't get to see the jinn. But the jinn the shaitan doesn't have power over you, doesn't have the ability to dominate you if you will disconnect, reject, and turn to Allah. Like when you turn to your creator, what will happen is that all of this will start to change. And this takes us on to actually believing in your own life. Like you have to believe in your future. This is number 5. The 5th reason for why we get stuck in this problem is that we almost hate our future, or we dislike it, or we don't look forward to it. We catastrophize and we feel a lot of anxiety about our lives. And this is something that impacts us because of the negative thoughts we have about that future. You see, if you are expecting your future to go wrong, if you're expecting everything about your future to be, negative, or there's always a negative twist on whatever you think about as it relates to your future, what you're doing is that you're looking at your future that doesn't yet exist. You're looking at it through the lens of your negative thoughts. And when you do that, you will catastrophize. You will feel, you will induce anxiety. And look, this is a problem that I suffered from. This is a problem that, the scholars that you turn to suffer from, the people of expertise, psychology, and all of those people. Like if you are one of them, you understand that you can't overcome this one unless you disconnect from the negative thoughts that create that future, because that future is not yet real. But what we do is that we create this negative future in our mind, and we hate it, we don't like it, we dread it, and in that dread, we start to disconnect from Allah. We start to think, Allah has no good for us. The decree of my life, my destiny is no good. And when you start to have negative thoughts about your future, you will live in anxiety, you will live in fear, you will live in anticipation, but negative anticipation, which is what anxiety is. Or at least this type of anxiety. And what will happen is that you will be impacted by your negative anticipation of this future until you recognize that you can change this. Because what's happening is that you are projecting this future through your mind. And it's the negative thoughts that you're having right now that project this. So in the same way of disconnecting from the negativity, like rejecting it, if you were to do that as it relates to your future, then all of a sudden you can now start to believe in your future. You can start to believe in your life. This doesn't matter whether you're 5, 15, 25, 45, 65. It does not matter, because the one thing we know for certain is that we're going to live forever. This is a guarantee. Allah teaches us through revelation that we're going to live in the dunya and the akhirah. That means you're going to live forever. And so when we are anticipating our future, you want to anticipate it in the best case scenario. And when you anticipate in the best case scenario, you're never going to be able to do that if you're doing it through your negative thoughts. You have to reject that. And what you have to do is you have to do it through a good anticipation. Now, here's the thing about a good anticipation of the future. If you're trying to anticipate the future and it is a future that you don't understand, you don't know how to create that future, then you're going to get stuck in your negative thoughts. You're going to get stuck in your, almost like despair of this, future ever happening. How will it happen? Because you are uncertain. And so the only way to create a future that's going to be amazing is that you have to create it through a very foundational principle that Allah teaches us in the Quran and the Sunnah, which is husnul dhan billah, like having good expectations of Allah. And this is what I want to wrap this episode up with. Like, this is going to change all of the things, all of these 5 problems that I've addressed. This will change all of it, and it will help you to actually change your life. It will help you to disconnect from all of the negativity, the negative incessant thinking. It will help you to stop comparing yourself to what you don't have already and actually revel in what you do have. And it will help you to stop the waswas. Like husnul dhan billah. Husnul dhan billah is like having good anticipations, having good thoughts about Allah in the present moment. So as it relates to your future, like you anticipate the good. Like as it relates to your entire life, you anticipate the good. As it relates to your life in this dunya and the akhirah, you anticipate the good. Even with all the mistakes that we've made, you make istighfar and you anticipate the good. You make istighfar and you anticipate the best, not just the good, but the best. And what will happen is that your anticipation of the best will be by choice. You will be determined to anticipate the good. And this is actually something that you've got to do, because we humans, we have extreme fear of the future, which actually debilitates us in the present. And what we want to do is we want to overcome that. So you anticipate the good. You anticipate all of this by choice. You must choose this. And if you do that, what will happen is that you will pursue this. You will choose to believe. You will choose to think. You will choose to dominate your own mind with this new anticipation, this husnul dhan, this good expectation, this good thoughts about Allah. And when you do that, what will happen is that your relationship with Allah will change. And if your relationship with Allah will change, then what will happen is that you will stop thinking there's something wrong with you. You will start to accept that you are the best of creation. You are created in the best of forms. You will start to disconnect from the negative thoughts. You will start to have light at the end of your tunnel. You will believe and you will scan your life and you will see the good in your life now. And when you do that, you will stop feeling as though you're never good enough. You stop being in this chase. And what that will do is that it will help you to dominate your mind so that you are not in a state of constant waswas, that you're in a state of good anticipation from Allah as it relates to your future. And that will give you hope, that will give you aspiration, that will give you ambition. And when you do that, it will change your life. This will impact you. It will impact your life, your relationships. It will impact every area of your life. So I want to suggest to you that you don't take this lesson lightly. I want to suggest to you that you have your children watch this, you have your family watch this, you have everyone that you know watch this. And I want you to go back over this as many times as you need. Allah guided you to this to show you what you can do to solve your life. This is the Quranic science of the Nafs psychology. It's a behavioral science. It is a human life optimization science. Allah intended that for you and I. Like, you can change your life. You can overcome this. And all you have to do is start implementing these skills. These are skills. These are tools. I've packed this lesson with so much in the hope that you will actually use it to change your life, the lives of your family, your community, and inshallah, we will spread this science until it impacts the whole of humanity. Like, no one deserves to be stuck in negativity, in suicidal thoughts, in negative thoughts about themselves, about other people, in their lives. The negative thoughts impact life, but using these tools, you can actually overcome all of it. I want you to slow down and really slow down, because I know for most of us, when we're in this chase for life, we are so fast we miss life itself. This is a fundamental skill that needs to be nurtured. This is the foundation of mental health, and this is also the foundation of, human flourishing, like serious development in your life. If you apply this, your life will change completely. And inshallah, I'm going to leave you on that. JazakumAllahu. Hey guys, thanks for listening in on this podcast. If you are ready to up-level your mind, emotions, and relationships using a Quranic solution, you're going to love this podcast and what we are going to be sharing over the coming episodes. This is the most fundamental training that you're going to go through in your life. You can use it to transform your life, your mental and emotional health, your relationships, how you parent, how you are in your marriage, and truly your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are loving this and you want more of it, click subscribe, or if you want one of our free trainings, go to themuslimlifecoach.org and sign up for the free training. You're going to love it. I'll see you on the inside. JazakumAllahu khair.